Nitasha, you've been writing about artificial intelligence recently and casting your judgment on it. And it's not the apocalyptic force that many critics claim, you reckon?
Yes, absolutely, it's not. I do think the first point I'd like to make is that there needs to be a lot more public awareness, even regulator awareness, even parliamentary awareness of what this technology is, simply because of the rate at which the innovation is happening in the sector. But it's actually been years since I've been working on this topic, and one of my favorite bits of this topic is the link between AI and democracy, because I'm really interested in how this kind of political and cognitive interface is being shaped by these technologies. In other words, that these technologies, AI technologies, LLMs, etc., are not only a tool, they are also shaping the way in which political reasoning happens. And we cannot take the defense of democratic values, the democratic imagination, the democratic dialogue for granted, given the wider global environment in which there is a lot of disinformation, there is a lot of hybrid warfare. So information flows, citizen deliberation, understanding political reasoning, the AI is a key part of that. So and that means also understanding these technologies.
What to make of the fact that the US big AI tech bros, as they called, all seem to be well in with Donald Trump at the moment, if you're talking about the politics of AI?
Well, I would, So I think firstly, there is definitely a historic problem with the tech sector and masculinity, and the tech bros reflect that. But I think beyond that, they're not, most of them are, but I think there are, certain actors that are trying to do things differently. Anthropic is a good example, and the standoff with Pete Hegseth illustrated that earlier on in this year.
We've been talking about Anthropic in the last hour.
Yes. So, when we say that, that they are all aligned with the government, well, yes, the fundamental nature of AI technologies is actually more suited to authoritarian systems than democratic ones, which is why you have to go against the grain to make them work for democracies, because centralized data, efficient processing, quick results actually enable mass databases, mass processing of information easier. And authoritarian regimes also have fewer guardrails on how they can train the models, what sort of data restrictions exist. So democracies are actually, need more thinking.
Reassure us why artificial intelligence isn't going to be the end of humanity in a few words.
Well, actually, I'll draw attention to recent FT research, which shows us that social media has had a polarizing effect, but LLMs, large language models, actually have the opposite effect. They make people move more towards thinking that is less extreme, so move people more towards the center. So I think definitely the doom and gloom can be overstated. It often is. I think humanity as a whole has dealt with major technological innovations that have reshaped the world, the internet, telecom, aviation, and this is the steam engine. So this is yet another technology, but I think we're going to have to learn to live on this planet with another intelligence as well.
On their most recent specialist topics, Nitasha Kaul, 7:40 GMT is the time. Nitasha, you've drawn our attention to the American artificial intelligence company Anthropic, headquartered in San Francisco. On Friday, Google announced it would invest in an immediate $10 billion in cash to help support a major expansion of Anthropic's computing capacity. This investment will then be tripled if performance targets are met. What is it about the company that particularly interests you, Nitasha?
Well, I think that when we think about frontier AI companies, this is a company that's trying to do something different than the others. For one, its stated position in terms of how it focuses on safety and societal impacts of AI. This is a firm that's led by, one of the founders. The founders are a brother and sister duo called Dario and Daniela Amodei. And the main founder, the person, Dario Amodei, he recently, not so long ago, was in a major standoff with the Pentagon, with Pete Hegseth there. And the core of that standoff was the insistence of Anthropic that on the way in which for autonomous weapons, there should be oversight and mass surveillance should not be enabled by these things. So I think this is a company that is trying to do something different than many other firms, even when in the very short run that might seem irrational. I think in the longer run, it demonstrates a commitment to AI safety.
Well, as you mentioned, Anthropic's been in the headline, US. So artificial intelligence and morality they can go together, Nitasha?
If we try hard enough, yes, absolutely. I think the point is that it isn't simply about that one dispute. Even in the Illinois case that that was just being referred to, Anthropic's position was actually that this liability limitation should not be there. So I think that it is important to appreciate that, like any other sector, this is a diverse sector, and that the fact that Mythos, which is the latest model in a series of various iterations of the LLM called large language model called Claude, is actually has capabilities that means that it cannot be released to the general public, which is why it is going to be at this point as part of this thing called Project Glasswing, be used only in high stakes infrastructures by government, etc. And I think here in the UK for us, Paul, I think it's really important because the UK government has been wanting Anthropic to expand its presence in the UK precisely for these reasons, because it is a good fit. And also, more recently seeking Mythos access for the banking sector, because a tool, an innovation that is so powerful that can reveal these vulnerabilities that have sometimes existed for decades is really actually important in certain kinds of in certain kinds of domains. So I think the longer picture here is what happens with the sorts of deals that are currently being made, for instance, with Amazon and others for cloud compute, and whether those infrastructural lock-ins will have will shape some of this current stance, which is great, but in 5 or 10 years' time, that is something that I think remains to be seen. And secondly, to see where this goes in terms of a divergence between the civilian and the more government and high-stakes use of this kind of technology. But I think as of now, as somebody who's been observing this very closely and very passionate about bringing academics, policymakers, and others to talk about these things. In fact, just last week we had an AI governance roundtable for the British International Studies Association at Whitehall Court, and I think that these are really, really critical questions. I think we should be talking a lot more about it.
Thank you. You're listening to The World Service. I'm Paul Henley with Weekend.